Hey YouTube, YTPC, what's up? Getting some snow out here. We don't get snow around these parts very often. Here in my part of Georgia, about 120 miles south of Macon, Georgia. And about every 7 to 10 years, we get this. Yeah, this is beautiful. So we're going to talk today about the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti. Got a pipe packed here. It's my Missouri Meerschaum Bracken. Inside, Cringle Flake, 2023 by Sutliff. I'm gonna fire this up. I'm gonna read to you a little bit out of my Mysteries of the Unexplained book here about the Abominable Snowman. I've done some other presentations about Bigfoot, and I think the Abominable Snowman is probably in the same family. We're going to talk about that. You can check those presentations out on the channel if you'd like to. I'm going to fire this up and we'll get started. I love this blend so much. Red Virginia, vintage 2003 Perique, Stoved Catarini. Since the sensational term Abominable Snowman burst upon a startled and delighted world, it has become clear that there is not just one big hairy upright hominid haunting the wild places, but a varied and widespread clan. As reports of sightings accumulate, it seems that there may be 3 distinct types of Yeti in the Tibetan Himalayan area: small, large, and extra large. All or none of which may be related. Only the large one seems to have any relationship to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the skunk ape of the Everglades, Momo the Missouri monster, and other American varieties. The Chinese ape man bears a strong resemblance to this group, but the Russian Kaptar seems to be in a class by itself. Are these different geographic races of the same species, or several different types with nothing in common but an upright stance and a lot of hair? Indeed, how do they compare? John Green, famous Sasquatch hunter, takes a stab at answering. In very approximate terms, the North American variety is a good deal larger than the others, while the Russian one is taller than the Himalayan, but perhaps not heavier. The Himalayan creature, on the evidence both of its description and its footprint, is entirely unlike a human. The Russian variety, on the other hand, may be very human indeed. For the benefit of those who fear that the killing of a Bigfoot for study would constitute not only murder but the elimination of a rare creature, Green adds firmly that there is not the slightest possibility that Sasquatches can be considered human or near human. Neither are they endangered species. He believes that they are numerous. With a few suspect exceptions, Bigfoot is a gentle giant, unduly monstrosized by people who cannot conceive of it as a member of the animal kingdom. The Yeti has also been sensationalized out of all proportion to reality. To the Sherpas, there is nothing mysterious about it. The creature has been part of their lives and recollections for at least 200 years. Himalayan villagers and hunters include it as just another animal when discussing local fauna. If it seems elusive, it is because its habitat lies far from human paths. Himalayan hunters say that the Yeti is not a man, nor does it live in the snow zone. Its home is in the highest Himalayan forests, deep in almost impenetrable thickets. There it repeatedly moves about on all fours or swings from tree to tree. When it ventures into the snow area, where mountaineers may glimpse it or its tracks, it walks upright with a rolling gait. The Sherpas suggest that its reason for crossing the snowfields is to seek a saline moss that grows on the rocks of moraines. Ivan Sanderson said that it is not moss they seek but lichens, which are rich in food value. The American creature appears to be slightly more gregarious and considerably more inquisitive than its Asian counterpart, but it too seems to enjoy a reclusive lifestyle. Skeptics may wonder how it is that so large and supposedly common an animal is able to elude searchers with such ease. In reply, Peter Byrne, founder of the International Wildlife Conservation Society Incorporated, points out that much of the 125,000 square miles of Sasquatch territory in the Pacific Northwest is heavily forested mountain, with few roads, a sparse human population, and almost no visitors. There's plenty of room in this kind of biological sanctuary for Sasquatches and other retiring creatures to live in peaceful, unthreatened isolation. The question of identity remains. Living in impenetrable woods appears to be characteristic of the larger, hairy, upright creatures everywhere and suggests that there may be evolutionary dropouts seeking refuge from an inimical world. If a few zeuglodons and plesiosaurs have slipped through the net of time, perhaps the two-legged enigmas are relics too. Bernard Havelmans suggests that the wild men of Asia may be leftovers of the race Pithecanthropus, which occupied Southeast Asia at the end of the Pleistocene period, particularly the larger specimens of the ancient ape-man group called Pithecanthropus robustus and Meganthropus paleojavanicus. Even pygmy varieties of the species may have survived, accounting for the smaller, unidentified ape-like creatures that are occasionally seen. Zhu Gongxing of the Peking Museum of Natural History speculates that the ape-like animals seen in and near Hubei province in the 1970s might have been descendants of Meganthropus, a giant ape man that died out because it lacked sufficient intelligence to adapt to its environment. Other ancients are equally likely contenders. In 1935, Dutch paleontologist Ralph von Koenigswald unearthed a collection of fossil teeth of Asian origin that were vertically identical to human teeth but 6 times larger. He decided that the specimens must have come from a species of giant ape, probably extinct for 500,000 years, which he called Gigantopithecus. But Gigantopithecus may not be extinct. Zoologist Edward Cronin suggests that during the Pleistocene age, Asian Gigantopithecus sought safety from Homo erectus in the almost inaccessible valleys of the Himalayas, and the relatives of the giant ape, distant or near, may well have found sanctuary in the still unexplored vastness of the New World. So that's pretty interesting. I would say those are some good points to bring up. Even in this day and age, in 2025, I would say there's probably still places on land that we haven't explored yet, just because they're so impenetrable. Now we'll get there, but there's probably still some places, thick, places, jungles, forests, places in these icy, snowy, cold mountains that we just hadn't found yet, and there could be something there. These guys could be there. So they mentioned here 125,000 square miles in the Pacific Northwest. That's really heavily forested, sparse human population. Some of these deeply wooded, forgotten places, especially up in these mountains in the Himalayas, they're so big, they're so vast, and there's valleys and crevices in there where little forests, small, little pockets of forest where things could get and live, come out. I'll read you a couple more tidbits here. Lieutenant Colonel C.K. Howard Berry and his companions, making their way from Karta to Lakpa La in Tibet on the first Everest reconnaissance expedition in 1921, saw several dark shapes moving about in a snowfield far above them. On September 22nd, when they reached the place where the creatures had been, they saw, at more than 20,000 feet up, numbers of enormous footprints. Lieutenant Colonel Howard Berry stated that at first they looked human, yet they were about 3 times the size of normal human footprints. Then he declared that they must have been made by a very large stray gray wolf. But several creatures had been seen. The Sherpa porters were sure the tracks had been made by an upright semi-human they called Mito, or Mete Kangme, snow or wild creature. A journalist later gave it the appellation Abominable Snowman. According to the Sherpas, the Snowman is a huge, hairy, half-man, half-beast that lives in caves high in the mountains. It is bow-legged, its ape-like arms reach down to its knees, and it is so muscular that it can rip up trees by the roots. The body hair is thick and dark, but the face appears to be white and humanoid. Ordinarily, the creatures feed off yaks and snowworms, but when desperately hungry, they go down into the valleys and carry off human beings. And thus began an avalanche of intriguing snowman stories. That's from Bernard Havelman's On the Track of Unknown Animals, pages 128 and 29, and from Ivan Sanderson's Abominable Snowman, pages 51 and 52. I was in 1921. This Cringle Flake is so good. It's January right now, and I told myself once Christmas was over I was going to put it down, and I did. But since it's snowing, I thought I would break it out. A little special thing. Thank you, Sutliff. A compelling piece of evidence in the case for the Yeti was discovered on November 8, 1951 by British mountaineers Eric Shipton and Michael Ward. The 2 climbers returning from a reconnaissance expedition on Everest were exploring the southwestern slopes of the Minlung Glacier when they came upon a fresh trail of enormous but human-looking footprints leading along the edge of an ice mass. Shipton photographed the trail. Close-ups of one of the particularly crisp imprint indicated a not quite human foot about 13 inches long and considerably broader than a mountain boot. This would suggest a biped about 8 feet tall. It must have been limber too. Where the tracks crossed a crevice, Shipton wrote afterward, one could see quite clearly where the creature had jumped and used its toes to secure purchase on the snow on the other side. That's from Bernard Havelman's On the Track of Unknown Animals, page 127. There's a picture here. While crossing a high pass near Mount Everest in 1951, Eric Shipton discovered and photographed a trail of huge footprints, possibly the tracks of an abominable snowman. A pickaxe shows one footprint size. More tantalizing evidence of the elusive Nepalese Yeti was found during the British Hinku expedition of 1979, after mountaineers John Edwards and John Allen spotted a possible campsite at almost 17,000 feet on their way down to base camp. On November 10, Edwards noticed an overhanging boulder that formed a natural cave and motioned Allen to wait while he took a closer look. He was astounded to see a set of almost human footprints in the snow. As Dr. Allen came to join him, both men were startled by a piercing, chilling, inhuman scream that lasted 5 or 10 seconds. Edwards and Allen decided they must be in the vicinity of an abominable snowman. The next day, the whole team, led by John White, returned to the site and photographed the still distinct footprints with their BBC camera. The tracks were of varying sizes, suggesting a pair or perhaps even small family of creatures. Droppings found near the prints were gathered to be taken back to England. For analysis, we have photographed a print, says White, that no one can satisfactorily identify. I am convinced that there is an animal up there that is not yet recorded by naturalists. That's from People. January 21st, 1980. There's a picture here. A cigarette pack shows the relative size of unidentified footprints found in the Himalayan snow by British mountaineers and photographed with a BBC camera. I just feel like that is so intriguing. Who knows what's in those mountains? I love forests, I love woods, and I feel like they're magical places. And sometimes I think they can harbor magical things, unknown things. Well, thank y'all so much for watching this presentation on the Abominable Snowman. I really appreciate it. Feel free to drop a comment about anything you'd like to say about it, or anything you know about the Abominable Snowman, or that you've read about the Yeti. Be glad to know what you think about it. Like this content if you dig it. See y'all next time.